All right, I'd like to welcome Scott Tupper to a special retirement edition of Field Hockey Canada One-on-One. Scott retires as the outgoing captain of the men's national team with 322 international matches to his name. He made his Team Canada debut in 2005 and played through the 2021 Olympic Games, World Cups, PanAms, Olympics. Scott, you've kind of done it all. Welcome, and thanks for sitting down.
Thanks, Kev. Happy to join you.
Okay, so I said you made your debut in 2005. So going back in time, 16, maybe more years ago. I just want to start right there, like before we get into talking about the decision to retire and some of your on-field and off-field stuff. 2005, Scott Tupper, what's going through his mind when he steps on the field for the first time, in the Team Canada uniform?
I didn't, probably not much. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was probably mostly focused on trapping the ball somewhat effectively when it came to me, and then not making too many mistakes. So I was 18 years old at the time, and we were playing a series against Scotland at home in Vancouver. I was out at UBC, but at that point I was really just getting my feet wet and trying to fit in as best as possible. But I don't know if I was doing that at that point yet.
Yeah. At that moment or over the course of that season, when you played a few games, could you sort of envision like, okay, I've got like a role in this team and I can see sort of a great career coming? Or was that just slowly over the next decade, you could see that eventually?
I would say slowly. I was okay on the ball and stuff like that, but I knew I wasn't at the level of the other guys yet. So I was going to try and find ways to kind of make up for it. And I do remember I did get to go on a training tour later that summer, and the coach at the time, Gene Muller, was like looking at me. He's like, "What? We watched the video. What are you doing in defense?" And my thing was, I wasn't super handy on the ball, but I didn't want my player to score. So I was basically getting in a wrestling match with whoever I was marking at the time and grabbing jerseys and stuff like that. And that was my way. I was going to try and get my way into international hockey and have some worth, is be really difficult to play against, and hopefully have my direct opponent not score any goals. But I was certainly nervous at times, but I really enjoyed getting to play with some of the guys who were a little bit older than me at the time, and had a lot of fun kind of starting to get settled in.
Mm-hmm. So I guess after making your debut in 2005, through 2005, six, attending some tours and some matches, and then you kind of settled into a full-time role in 2007. And then right away you play your first sort of major games at PanAms. Can you walk me through that PanAms a little bit? And just because it was kind of an iconic win, and those 07 games as a young player on that team, and then obviously it leading to the 08 Olympics. That stretch, you were pretty young, one of the youngest players on the team at the time. Can you just sort of walk me through your experience in those moments?
Yeah, so late 2006, or we had a coaching transition where Gene Muller left the program, and Lou Mendonça took over. And Lou gave me an opportunity to go on a training tour in March, I think it was, to England. And I don't think he expected much of me, but there were some guys not going to be playing, and I think I was there to make up numbers initially, but I ended up doing all right, and he kept selecting me for the trips after that, and ultimately made it onto the PanAms team, which was not something I expected at the time, or at least maybe earlier in 2007. I didn't really think I was going to be in with a shot for that trip, but for whatever reason, I managed to get myself in there. And again, it was one of those things, I didn't really know what I was getting into. It was a multi-sport, or my first big tournament, and it happened to be a multi-sport games as well. And that's a really exciting event. Obviously, there's lots of different countries there, lots of different sports. You're in an athletes village for the first time, and for the most part, you're just kind of looking around like, am I supposed to be here, or like what's going on? And it was kind of a funny tournament for us, because we did ultimately win a gold medal. But it was by no means a smooth sort of path throughout the tournament. But we drew, I think we drew the US in the pool play. We beat Chile perhaps, and we beat the Netherlands Antilles, who had a team at that point, which was just a bunch of Dutch guys. And then we went into the semifinals and played against Trinidad and Tobago, and we're losing 2-0, I think 10 minutes in, and ultimately needed extra time to beat Trinidad in the semis, which, I mean, Trinidad can play hockey and they have some very good players, but I think as a Canadian team, you're somewhat expected to beat Trinidad, especially in a knockout game. And then we got into the final, and it was kind of one of those things where Canada does expect and intend to be in the final against Argentina. And for me, I didn't play very much in that game, just a few minutes here and there. I ultimately had to go in extra time and play center mid because Shorty got injured and had to come out for 2 minutes, and I hadn't been on the field for about 45 minutes. I don't even know if I had my shoes laced up, but I had to go play center mid, and I was like, oh, this is less than ideal. But we ultimately got through extra time and had to go to strokes, which was a little bit funny because while I didn't play a lot, I actually had a pretty good stroke, and lo and behold, I took one and missed. But for me, the coolest part of that whole experience was I took my stroke, and the goalie went completely the other way, but I hit the post. So it's a good stroke, but it didn't go in the goal. But then I could hear Mike Mahood, who was our goalie at the time, fantastic, just kind of yelled in his deep voice. And anyone who knows Mike will know exactly the voice I'm talking about. And he just said, "It's all right, Tuppy, I got the next one." And he did. He made the save, and then we ended up going goal for goal or something like that, and going to extra time in strokes. And Wayne Fernandez or Mike made another save, and then Wayne Fernandez put one in the top corner, and it was like all of a sudden Canada's qualified for the Olympic Games. We're all going crazy, all that sort of stuff. And it was it felt like a little bit surreal. Back then I don't think there was live streaming. I don't even know if there was live updates online, and it's really not that long ago. It was 2007. But the tech was not fantastic. So I remember actually phoning my mom to let her know that we had won, and burst into tears and all that sort of stuff. And it was pretty cool. But that was for a first big tournament for me, like what an experience to get to win the gold, and to have that stand on the top of the podium. That was something I really cherish and was really fortunate to be a part of.
Yeah, and then obviously it led to the '08 Olympics, and I feel like probably about at that point you'd establish yourself as a young player on the team, and you go to your first games. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the '08 games, and I'll ask you a little later to kind of compare them because you've been to 3 now. So, but maybe those '08, your first introduction to Olympic hockey, and probably that first moment where you're like, I'm here and I'm kind of here for good.
Yeah. And so in the next sort of period after that, the great thing about playing or qualifying for the Olympic Games is now Olympic teams, like, they want to play you and they want to prepare against you and all that sort of thing. So we really had a great run up in the next, I guess it would have been 11 months or so. And during that period, I was pretty fortunate. I got more comfortable playing high level hockey and was able to play a lot of minutes and start for the most part the whole year, which was really nice. And it was, again, kind of one of those things where I was still totally getting my feet wet and trying to figure out how to play against all the best players in the world and all that sort of stuff. And I got a little bit more confident as we went on, but it was all new experiences for the most part. Trips you went on, you were kind of going somewhere for the first time. Countries you played against, it was kind of playing against teams for the first time for the most part. But we were playing very well at the time, to be honest. That team was pretty strong, and in May, June, and then July into the Olympics, we were playing a pretty good level. And it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of really great veteran leadership. And then a few of us younger guys that had come into the team and were starting to help out, which was really great. And like PanAms the year prior, I would say it was the same thing going into an Olympic Village when we ultimately got there, but totally kind of tenfold in terms of compared to a PanAms, where the sort of status of athlete that's there, the amount of countries, the level of the accommodations and stuff like that is just dramatically increased. And I was probably wide-eyed the entire time and whispering with teammates, but there's Nowitzki or whoever, or Nadal, or all these different guys. But it was a really great experience, something I look back on pretty fondly. But at the same time, I feel really fortunate to have gotten to do it again, because you are so almost in shock and taking it back the first time. It is kind of good to go another time where you're a little bit more settled in and feel a little bit more experienced in the whole thing as well.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And you mentioned, almost every experience for the first few years of your career are kind of the first time you do something. It just so happens that you stacked PanAms and Olympics kind of quickly, front loaded them on your career. Um, I want to ask you a little bit, take a sort of a diversion here. You went and played overseas a few years after that in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands. I know we've talked a little bit about the competitive atmosphere in elite European leagues. Can you talk about how, like, again, this would have been another first for you going over and playing elite hockey in Europe. Can you talk about that sort of time in your career and how it, I guess, contributed or made an impact on your career when you like inevitably returned to Canada and, had that sort of spot on the senior national team and now you had more worldly experience, I suppose?
Yeah. So for me, I did 5 seasons in Europe, and I honestly, I wish I had done more. I had a fantastic experience everywhere I played. And I really believe if you can find the right opportunity, that it's a hugely valuable thing for you, certainly as a hockey player, but also just as a person. It's pretty cool to go to Europe and live a different lifestyle, live in a different city and different customs and whatnot. You have to settle into a different culture, both within a country and a city, and a hockey team as well, which can be unique. Mark Pearson and I went in 2009 to Ulster in Germany, and we played 2 seasons there, and it was an unbelievable time. On the field, in our second season, we won the German championship, which was incredible. The level of hockey was really, really high. We had 3 or 4 guys on our team who were either Olympic or World Cup champions. We had Barry Middleton from England, who's probably the best hockey player England's produced in the last 20 years. We had a really, really good level. And to be able to train with players like that every week and then play competitions on the weekend in pretty good pressure situations was something that was hugely important, I think, for us as players. And we could bring that experience back to the Canadian team, and it certainly made us better players. I've always said, like, when you go to play abroad, there's something about being a foreigner where you have a unique pressure in that, yeah, everyone on your team, the Germans or Dutch, who wherever country you're playing in, they all want to win, but you also kind of have to prove yourself as a foreigner, and kind of prove why you have a spot in a roster, why a club is spending money to fly you in, and if they're paying you a little bit, why are they doing that when they could have grabbed a guy from the next town over or something like that. So you have a unique pressure, but I do think if you can embrace that and do well, it certainly makes you a better player. And it's fun as well. It's fun to have that sort of pressure, because then when you do win, the Europeans also have a really good way of celebrating the wins and having fun off the field as well. So I can't lie, like, while the on-field was really good, we certainly had a lot of fun being guys in our early mid-20s living in Hamburg, and then later on in Brussels and in Holland. There was a good social side to the experience as well. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll take this chance because I don't really get it very often to talk to a 3-time Olympian. I want you to try to draw some comparisons, similarities, or differences from that sort of first '08 experience that you talked to Rio and then to Tokyo. And I understand Tokyo kind of stands almost alone in its way, that it happened through COVID and all the challenges. And we have actually talked about those, but maybe you can compare '08 to 16 to 21 and just like how you changed during that period and just the differences in games and atmosphere.
Yeah. So I think for me personally, like in Beijing, from a hockey perspective, I was an okay player. And I had a spot in the team, and I played quite a lot of minutes, which was good. But I think by the time we got to Rio, I knew I was certainly a much better hockey player, and I was quite confident in what I was doing from a personal perspective. And then similar in Tokyo, it's weird. You almost think like if all 3 teams could play each other, who would win? Like I don't know. Our Beijing team was very good. We had a couple games that went not sideways for us, but we lost 3-1 to Pakistan, and we should have done better in that game. And England drew us late. We were leading 1-0, and they scored with just a few minutes left to tie 1-1. And if those games had maybe gone another way, like we had a real shot at being a top 8 team, and we played some of the bigger teams well. And then Rio, we had patches of playing very well. We played very well against India in our final game, but before that, I think the moment got to us a little bit too much. And we just weren't quite experienced, I think, in big games and big tournaments. And because there was only Mark and I had experience at a Olympics and a big event like that, some of the guys maybe were a little bit just overwhelmed, and it's really hard. It's like when it's the first time you've played in a tournament where everyone's properly prepared for you, it is difficult. Like you don't catch anyone by surprise at a World Cup or an Olympic Games. They've watched every game you've played in the last 2 years. They've watched all your corners. They know all your tendencies. You have to show up and perform when everyone knows you're coming. Whereas sometimes I think what we had done in 2015 is that we certainly caught Spain by surprise and got results against teams that maybe didn't expect us to be as good as we were. But there's no surprising in the biggest stage. And we learned that lesson a little bit in Rio. And then Tokyo, I think we were super ambitious. And I do think the extra year, other than Mark being able to be healthy for it, it might have hurt us a little bit. People like myself were a year older, which was probably less than ideal. And we had a big gap in competition, coaching change, and all that sort of stuff was less than ideal for preparation, but it just kind of was what it was. We didn't really complain about it. We just kind of went about our business. And some of the results were tough, that's for sure. And we had ambition to do a little bit better than we did, but ultimately had a really good experience as well, despite kind of the COVID component of it, where it wasn't as social an event as it normally is. You don't have your fans and supporters there in the crowd, which is such a big part of the Olympic Games and such an exciting thing. All these people that have supported you for so many years, that if they can make the trip, that does make it a whole lot more enjoyable. But I do find it hard to compare because they all are kind of in their way a unique experience. It wasn't one element of Tokyo that I did like was because there wasn't a whole lot to do. You weren't really supposed to do much other than hang out. We just hung out with each other a lot. So you just spent a lot of time with your buddies and shooting the breeze and watching other sports in your room and all that sort of stuff. So I did enjoy that part of it for sure.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about leadership. Obviously, you're the outgoing captain of the men's team, and you've been a captain for almost a decade, since 2012. For you, what are some things, I guess, that you learned from the leaders and captains that came before you? I guess some stuff you hope that leaders can take from you, from here on out, and just like how you think your like leadership evolved from 2012 to, I suppose, Tokyo, right? You went through 2 Olympic cycles as a group, as the team captain. How do you think your leadership style evolved and morphed?
So the first part about what you said in terms of like people I look to and stuff like that, like he's a very good friend, and but I always looked up to Rob Short, and I was very fortunate to be roomed with him when I was a younger player, which was such a cool experience for me. And we became very good friends playing together and still are, but I looked up to Rob a lot. He was a truly world-class player. But the big thing for me was just how much he cared, and representing Canada and being a part of our national team was super important, and that rubbed off on me a lot. Like there was a passion, and there was times where if you were to read a leadership book, maybe it wasn't the best tactic or something like that. But for me, the thing that always mattered was he really cared about the Canadian team and the Canadian team doing well. And that always showed up on the field. There was never a second taken off, whether it was in training or games or anything like that. And for me, that was the example I really looked to. I thought Ken Pereira was, they were very close friends, and Kenny was similar in the performance aspect, where he um, training or games, Kenny was fantastic. He wasn't as vocal as Rob. He rarely spoke up, but his actions certainly spoke for themselves. And then the other thing, to be honest, and anyone who knows the guys would say this, they also really enjoyed themselves. Like they enjoyed being hockey players, and there was time to be super serious in what we were doing, and there's also time to have a little bit of fun. And I think we're playing a sport where you're not getting paid mega millions. It has to be fun to be part of the team as well. I do think that's important. And then in terms of my own leadership, I think when I first started kind of actually getting sort of a leadership role and maybe having a bit of a voice, I think I thought you had to have a big speech all the time or something, or you had to have the right thing to say, or sometimes I would have an outburst for like no reason. If I was to watch video of it now, I'd probably laugh. So I think that's fine, because I mean, leading or leadership is like just about any skill probably in sport, where you get better at it, or you figure out what works and what doesn't. And I think I probably did hit my sweet spot in like that 2015 to 17 or something like that, where I was really comfortable with the way I was playing, because it is helpful if you're playing well to lead, because if you're gonna ask something of the guys, then and you're not performing yourself, they'll kind of look at you sideways. But I think as I evolved, I probably quieted down a little bit and wanted to make, if I was going to yell and scream about something or have a really serious point, I wanted it to actually hit home, rather than guys being like, Tups is going on again. And then they kind of turn around or something like that. And then, to be honest, by the end of my career, the team was very like quite experienced and could kind of guide itself. And there was a couple times here and there where it's like, if the ship's going and it veers, you're just like, okay, we got to straighten out a little bit. But I was really lucky to have a team that was, while I was a leader and I had the captain role, there was a lot of experienced guys and a lot of voices that carried weight, and that made it quite easy, I would say.
Yeah. Before we talk more about, I guess, the decision to retire and what's next on the agenda for you, I want to give the opportunity for you to identify sort of some highlights. I mean, I leave it to you to decide on and off field highlights, but obviously we don't have 9 hours to have this discussion, but some other on field, we talked a little bit about your Olympics experience so far, but World Cups, Com Games, PanAms, qualifiers. I know a lot of guys highlight the qualifiers as major moments. For you, what sort of jumps out just out of like your head immediately?
Yeah. So like kind of on what you just said, the qualifying moments are the biggest ones for me. Like World Cups and Olympic Games are unbelievable. And it's competing at the top of your sport with and against the best players in the world. And that's what any kind of top sport athlete would want to do. And so those were fantastic experiences. But the nature of it as a Canadian men's team player is that they're also really difficult tournaments, and sometimes you lose some games, and it can feel in the moment it's difficult. But I would say the big successes on field were my highlights. So I was fortunate to win 2 Pan Am tournaments in 2007 and then 2009. Those were absolutely incredible. Both were bizarre tournaments in terms of the way they played out. In 2009, we had to play Argentina in the semifinal, and we beat them, and then we beat the US in extra time in the final, and that was awesome. 2015, when we had the dramatic shootout against New Zealand, and we had basically punched our ticket to Rio. That was just like such a relief, to be perfectly honest, because, and I know for Mark and I, like both of us, we kind of felt a burden to make sure that we helped carry the legacy of Canadian field hockey. Like we were fortunate to go to an Olympics, as I think I was 20, Mark might have just turned 21. I was still 21 in Beijing. But when we had become more senior players, like we almost, as a duty, like we needed to help get this next group to an Olympic Games. And there was a bit of a pressure there, and to have that relief and know that we had done it was unbelievable. Then 2017, we did really well at World League in London. We had a great tournament. We beat Pakistan 6-0, which is like a bizarre scoreline to look back on. We beat India in the final game. They were ranked 5th in the world at the time. That was great. And the other one more recently would be 2019 when we had the FIH Series finals in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, when we beat Malaysia in the final 3-2. We hadn't actually won something in 10 years. And that's a long time to go without like winning a tournament. So that was it was a relief, but it was just like pure joy. Like there was no podium. I don't know if there was a medal. We got a little plaque or something like that, but it felt like getting a gold medal again. And I was just so excited to be able to celebrate something. And we celebrated after the game, and it was a lot of fun. We had a fun night in Kuala Lumpur. So kind of like doing really well on the field was great. And then being able, a lot of those good results on the field were followed up by a little bit of fun in the few hours after. So those are the good moments as well. And then to be honest, like with the on-field stuff, there's also just the normal day-to-day stuff that sometimes in the moment isn't super fun, but you kind of look back on it with a laugh. And whether it's training in just the most horrendous rain that it's like a 0.5 degree Celsius off of being snow, and you're just cold, it's windy and raining, and you're just like in the moment, like, what are we doing? But then it kind of hardens you, or it sharpens you as you go through your career. Or like, field's frozen this morning, so we can't play hockey, so we're just going to run, and that sort of stuff. And in the moment, you're like, what am I doing? I should get a real job. But it's a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade any of those days for anything, because those are those moments with the team that you finish up that running session you did, and then you go grab a coffee and a muffin, you sit around and you chat with the boys and have some fun. And that's the sort of stuff I really do look back on, and just kind of any athlete that retires, but just the team moments, that sort of stuff is really fun.
Yeah, I feel like having the love for those moments along the way lead to like longevity often.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who care a lot about those like micro moments with teammates, or those after practice moments, or even the hard practice moments, can do it for a long time, right? Because there's that constant joy.
Yeah, and like totally for me. So I like 16 years is a pretty reasonable amount of time, but I think for me, I was lucky, and I don't know if everyone's like this, but I really liked practice. Like I liked going to practice, and I found it fun. And maybe some others didn't and thought I was, but I usually was having a good time. And you can find ways to make training a little bit light. Sometimes it was a little bit intense, but at the end of the day, I was like always happier to be at training and doing whatever I was doing field hockey wise than whatever the alternative would have been, actually being gainfully employed and having some sort of real world job.
Yeah. Let's talk about that then. Here you are out in the real world, so to speak. You've, you decided to retire over the course of this last, I imagine probably half a year, probably contributing to your decision here. But maybe you could just take me through some of those decisions and how you ultimately decided to, retire.
Yeah. So I've been balancing work and playing for the last, I would call it 1.5 years or something like that. So I work in coaching collegiately in the NCAA, and I was able to balance it, fortunately, leading up to Tokyo, and was really happy with how that went. And just being my age, I'm just 35 next week, but for the last little bit leading up to Tokyo, people were always asking me like, is this it? Like, you've been doing it for a while. And I didn't really want to have an answer for it. I didn't want to go into Tokyo knowing I was done, or whenever I would be done, I wanted to kind of have it removed from something like the Olympics, so that I could just enjoy the Olympics for what it was. It's a great tournament with my teammates. And also I would not want to have gone in and had any element of our team experience be like, oh, well, this guy, it's more special for him because it's his final thing. Like, I don't think that's fair, because whether it's your third or your first or your 10th, like, it should just be that event and just equally special for everyone. So I was unfortunate. So I went home to Vancouver pretty quick and then came straight to, I'm in Maryland. I coach at the University of Maryland at the moment, and got straight into our season. And I basically didn't think about playing hockey for a few weeks because I was right into work and I just wanted to push it to the side. And then I would say a month and a half or 2 months ago, I was like out for a run, and whenever I could squeeze it in, I started going, and I was like, maybe I still got something in my legs. Next tournament's not that far away. Maybe like I think I can keep playing. I was almost like runner's high or something like that. And then I didn't run again for like 5 weeks. And then I was like, okay, maybe that wasn't a real thing. Like, I don't, like, because I've always said, the minute like I don't really want to do the training, or I'm not like actually getting myself to do the training, you're just kind of telling yourself. And
Right.
I kind of woke up one day, I'm like, well, that run that I felt really good on, it was like 5 weeks ago. So I guess I've told myself it's time to kind of hang up the stick and start cheering from the sidelines when the Red Caribou are out there.
Yeah, fair enough. And I did want to ask you a little bit about your coaching role. We'll finish up here in a few minutes, but yeah, so you worked at Lafayette College during the sort of COVID year, and then now leading up to Tokyo, and now you're at the University of Maryland. Can you talk about how that just sort of came to be, and yeah, if you're enjoying the NCAA coaching life?
Yeah, so I've always had an interest in the NCAA. I am just a big sports fan in general, and obviously all that goes into the NCAA, not just within field hockey, but within other sports. It's always been something that's pretty appealing to me, and that I might like to be a part of, because obviously as field hockey players, we didn't have the opportunity, and it is common for a lot of girls from Canada to go down. But I was working at a tournament with the Rob Short Coaching Academy, and we had some teams who were down there, and just speaking to some coaches, and if I'd ever be interested in coaching in the US. And afterwards, someone reached out and just said, oh, I do have a position coming open. And that was at Lafayette College. So went through that process and got hired, and had a really great year. It was a unique year for sure, in terms of we didn't have very many kids on campus in the first half of the 2021 calendar year.
Right.
And then we played a truncated season, and then at the end of the season, and kind of in between that and Tokyo, Maryland had a position open up, and it was actually a really difficult decision to leave Lafayette. I had a fantastic time there. I loved who I worked with, but within field hockey, Maryland is a very strong program, and I didn't think it was an opportunity I could pass up. So applied and interviewed and all that sort of stuff, and it went well. So after Tokyo, I came basically straight to Maryland, and life has moved quick. My wife and I have a home here now, and we're really enjoying it. And this season went really well. The program is in a good spot. Played in the Final Four, didn't quite make it to the final and get to contend for a national championship, but have really enjoyed it. Collegiate coaching is unique, where you have 3 months or so where you're really in season and competing, and the other 9 months are administrative stuff, a whole lot of recruiting, a lot of different things that go into the job. But it's a really fun job, and I've really been enjoying it so far, and looking forward to kind of developing in the role and learning more about coaching, hopefully getting better at coaching, because I still have a whole lot to learn. But yeah, it is another one of those things where I don't think I was ever going to do particularly well in a pure office environment. So being able to maintain this close connection to the sport that I've really taken a lot from, and hopefully help other athletes have a similar experience to me, it's been something that I've really enjoyed, and looking forward to continuing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure with a massive hockey background and years of being a captain, you're well set up to tackle the coaching role. Okay, I want to finish here. You've seen new players come to the men's national team, and then they play their whole careers and they retire. You've been a part of multiple cohorts, since 05, 06 era. What are your expectations and hopes for the men's national team moving forward? And what do you see from that kind of next generation that you've been working with over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so my immediate hope is that the guys do really well in January at Pan Am Cup, and the women as well, and can qualify for a World Cup. I know 2022 is going to have a lot of stuff for the guys, certainly, in terms of their calendar, and I'm looking forward to watching. I think we've had some young players step in and have really good impacts on the team recently, which has been great. Guys like Jamie and Finn and Brendan, who were all able to get Olympic experiences at 21 or younger, however old they were. And that's fantastic. And there's some of us kind of moving on from the program recently, and I don't think it's a void. I think it's just an opportunity for the next guys to step in and do really well and kind of take on a little bit of a bigger role and really enjoy it and succeed with it. We've got some great players in the program, and there is still a good amount of experience. You've got players playing abroad. Gordy is doing really fantastic at HGC in Holland and lighting the lamp there, which has been awesome. I know Suki's playing in England, and there's others abroad as well as a group training domestically. So I expect the guys to have a Canadian component to them in terms of they're going to work really hard. They're going to be really difficult to play against. And then hopefully Pasha and the coaching staff will keep upskilling them where necessary and get them prepared, and they'll be able to perform. But yeah, just to be honest, I'm looking forward to be able to sit on my couch over there and support and see them do really well. I think they'll be in a good spot and they'll be well prepared for the upcoming events, and playing in Pro League and all that sort of good stuff is a really good opportunity to get some really high quality opposition and experience and set the team up for a good run in the next few years.
Yeah, well, Scott, it's been awesome talking to you. I'm sure you've left a lasting legacy with all the players on the team right now, and they'll take it forward. Congrats and on an amazing career, and thanks for chatting.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.